Good afternoon and welcome to Tech Tuesdays with IPDAY. I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our Tech Tuesday, which is going to be an introduction to Airtable. My name is Alex Ramirez and I'll be your presenter for this afternoon. And before we get started, I do want to cover some quick housekeeping rules for this webinar. During the presentation, if you have a question, please feel free to type it into the Q&A option. At the end of the presentation, I have some time set aside to answer any questions. Throughout the webinar, the attendee microphones will be muted and you will be in listen-only mode. Today's presentation is also being recorded and will be archived and available on the IPDAY website within 48 hours. So before we get started, I want to kind of introduce Airtable and what it is. Airtable is a cloud-based collaboration service and software that provides tools for creating and sharing relational databases. So very simple, very similar to Excel, but with a bunch of added tools that make it a lot more powerful. It lets you store, organize, and visualize information in ways that are more versatile and flexible than, say, a traditional program like Microsoft Excel. The service is often compared to spreadsheet database hybrid due to the availability of linking records between tables. So this is something that is usually associated with Microsoft Access or other softwares that allow you to link records between tables. And it's also really useful because it offers a variety of view options such as grid, calendars, Kanbans, galleries, and form views. You can also use Airtable for project management, for inventory tracking, for student progress tracking, and project management. It's highly customizable and it's suitable for both personal and school uses. Users can integrate Airtable with other popular apps and services to automate workflow, such as Slack, Google Calendar, MailChimp, and a few others. So today's webinar, we're going to cover a few key components of Airtable and how they operate. First, we're going to jump into what workspaces and templates are. After that, I'll cover the different field types that are available to create in each of these spreadsheets. And after that, we'll go into the different various views, the ones I just mentioned, such as form view, grid view, and Kanban. Then we'll talk about colors, filters, and grouping, and of course, how to sort all of your data. And finally, we'll end with a brief overview of the various extensions, automations, and interfaces that are available at Airtable, because that is really what makes it, what differentiates it from Excel. So we're going to jump into the live demonstration now. So the first thing I want to cover is workspaces and bases. So once you create an Airtable account, you'll be taken to this dashboard here, which is kind of like the home menu dashboard. And here on the home menu dashboard, you'll be able to create bases and workspaces. So a workspace, you can think of it as a folder where you can house different files. So the workspace is an area where you can share with other employees, other teachers, or administrators at your site in order so that they have access to the various bases under this workspace. So if you see here where it says a share button, you can click the share button. And this is where you'll be able to invite either by email or by link other employees in your organization. When you enter their email here, you'll be able to set their permissions, whether or not you want them to have full creator access, which means that they can edit the entire base, columns, and records, as well as the actual structure. They can add interfaces and automations, editor, which allows them to only edit records and views, but they cannot configure the tables or fields. And of course, commenters and read only. So these are the various different levels of admin privileges that you can offer to your colleagues as you give them access to the base. And you can also invite them by link, which is similar, only it will give you an access link that you can share via email or text. So, once you have a workspace set up, the next step is to create different bases. And you can do that by clicking on the Create a Base button here. and the create a base button gives you a blank base. Now there's various ways to kind of get your spreadsheet going. The first thing is to create it from importing existing data. So you'll notice here on the right-hand side, there's a menu that pops out from the side, from the right-hand side, that says getting started, import your work. So if you already have a spreadsheet that you're using in Microsoft Excel, or you have a CSV, you can click on these icons here, and it will bring up the way to connect to your Google account, for example, for Google Sheet, and you'll be able to import a Google Sheet here. If you have an actual file, an Excel file, you'll be able to click here on the Excel button and upload your file here. And what it will do is transpose all of that information from your Excel file into the Airtable base. You also notice that you can paste the data straight from your tables or import it as a CSV. Another great feature that Airtable has is that it has different templates. So if you want to access templates, to begin from a template so you don't have to create everything from scratch, that is available. However, it is a feature that you have to pay for. So I'll show you that on the other workspace that I have that's a paid version. So those are basically the 3 different ways that you can bring in information. And at this time, I'm going to switch to a paid base so that you guys can see what a finalized base with some of the options would look like. So the next thing I want to talk about is the field types. So I'm going to be going over to this credit recovery, credit certification workspace to talk about field types. So you'll notice that I have various columns of data here in this Airtable, all different types. And you'll notice that some of them are colored and some of them are text and date. So I just want to go over the various different fields that Airtable offers. So the first and kind of most simple fields are going to be the single line text and also the long text. Now, those are pretty self-explanatory. They let you type in text into the field. The single line text, obviously for shorter pieces of information. The long text allows you to put entire paragraphs. The next field is going to be the attachment field. And the attachment field is really great because it allows you to add pictures or documents. So if you are working on a project deadline, or you're working to use this as a project management tool, you can use the attachment field to attach documents as you progress through the processes. The next field is a checkbox field, which is just a simple check. And then you have multiple and single select, which are probably going to be some of your most utilized fields. You also have a user field, which allows you to identify a user that is on your Airtable workspace. And you also have a date, phone number, and email fields. That's great for maintaining contact information. Something I do want to point out, there's 2 date fields here in Airtable. The first one is the date here, and the other one is the created time. So the created time is also a date field that helps you to remember at what point that record was created. So if we added a created time, for example, to these and include the date format, we'll create that field. And what it'll do is search the history of that record, and it'll add a field here that calculates at what date and what time that specific record was created. So there we go. These will show May 18th, 2021. That's that first one, quite an old record. And then some of the ones that I created for today's presentation. Some other important fields that I do want to mention are the link to another record field. The link to another record field is a really useful field here in Airtable. That's primarily the reason why it's used as a kind of relational database tool. And the link to another record allows you to link records between 2 different tables. So if you have a record in table 1 and a record in table 2, let's say 2 different sets of student information data, and you want to connect those via the student ID number, you can do that right here using this record. And I'm going to show you guys in just a moment what that looks like. So I'm going to carry over here to this database. Now, this is an aircraft maintenance log that I created at my school, which is a technical college. And we use this to track some of the maintenance records. Obviously, this is all kind of dummy data. I've changed a lot of the data around, but it does give you a kind of an idea of what it looks like to have images and documents uploaded to the Airtable records. So you'll notice here that I have some basic information on the airplane, the serial number, the tail number, an image, the make and model, and these are various different types of fields. So for example, the make is a text field, the model is a drop-down field, the location of the aircraft is also a drop-down field, and you'll notice that here I have a linked field with some numbers. And this field is called maintenance tickets. So, and this is what I want to showcase, how these linked fields work. So essentially what this does is link to the maintenance table here. And the maintenance table, let's see here. The maintenance table has all of the different maintenance items for each aircraft. Now they're linked by the aircraft type, by this specific aircraft. So these three maintenance items, which are connected to this aircraft, are connected on the aircraft maintenance tickets for that aircraft. So if I click on 31 here, I'll be able to bring up that maintenance item from the other table, and it'll show you a nice line connecting to the table, so you know exactly where that data is coming from. And this is a really powerful tool for keeping track of several different sets of student data that can be housed on various tables. Another really cool thing about Airtable's linking feature is that it helps you to keep all of your data organized. You no longer have to kind of stuff all of that data in one sheet with a million different columns. It's a lot more useful to have it separated by the different category and then be able to connect those via those different fields. So the next thing I want to talk about is the various views that Airtable has in its feature base. So as you notice here, this kind of looks like a typical spreadsheet, very basic table view that has all of the columns and the rows. But what makes Airtable really unique is that it does have various different views. Now, before I get started, something that's really important to see is the form view. So the form view is a great way to collect data and store it in Airtable in these databases. And the way that you would do that is creating a form here in the form view. So down here in this bottom section where it says create, and then it has all of these different view forms. These are the various different view types that are available in Airtable. So the way that you access that is going over to the left-hand side to the pane that says views and clicking on that button, and that'll bring up your saved views and also the option to create new different types of views. So let's take a look at what the credit certification form looks like. So this is a form that we used actually 2 years ago. And what it did was collect student information for credit certifications. So I had a couple different fields in here: student ID, first name, last name, some drop-down menus for the various different schools at which a student could take a credit certification, the date, a grade level, and some course selection options here. And the idea was to kind of streamline the registration process for students that needed to take credit certification classes in an adult education school in the night program. And once the student completed this alongside with their counselor at their home school, it would populate this data into the grid view here, into the main grid view. So that's just an example of another feature that Airtable has. It does work as a form software as well. You can use that form view and share the form view link or put it up on a website in order to collect data. Up here at the top navigation bar next to the views button, you'll notice a share form button. And this is where you can create a link. And that link you can share or connect to a QR code in order to collect the different data pieces for your Airtable. So that is form view. We've covered grid view, which is the typical kind of basic view. It outlines all your raw data right there. It showcases all the columns and all of the records. And you can obviously hide fields as well. So let's say that if you only wanted to check in this entire list, you only wanted to see, let's say, the first, last name, and school, I could click here on the hide all button and click first, last name, and school. And that'll showcase only those fields. If I wanted to show all the fields again, I just click here on the show all button, and that'll populate all the fields once again. The next view I want to check out is the calendar view. So let's go back over to our aircraft maintenance database. And you'll notice that I have quite a few views here. But here at the top, I have a calendar view for maintenance. So when I click on this calendar view for maintenance, I'll have a calendar here along with these 2 maintenance tickets that happen on 2 different days. So I see here that on the 3rd, I had a maintenance item done. The item was number 38, which was done on this airplane. And this was the status and the pending status. Now, this is really great if you're trying to track a series of events. Maybe you're tracking events at your school or upcoming trainings or courses, as it does let you connect in a relational way, that same way that we saw earlier. And it lets you expand these records individually. So if you go over to the date and you select the item, you can select and choose which one of these pieces of information will become visible immediately. And then if you want to see the entire record, you would just click here on expand record, and that'll bring up the entire record. You'll notice here the initial fields that were included, and then here it'll say hide 7 hidden fields. That's a tab that lets you see all the other fields that were not originally included in the view. And these view options are available up here using the which different fields you want to select. So the next view I want to take a look at is the gallery view. And the gallery view is really great if you have a lot of photos. So for example, if you have, take a look here, I'm going to go over to aircraft. In this spreadsheet, I have all the information for each of the different aircraft. And you'll notice that I have photos of each of the aircraft to help the mechanic instructors at the school identify, which airplane they're working on. And I have here a gallery view that allows those teachers to simply identify that information by looking at the photo. So by taking a look here, they can quickly, using a mobile device or a laptop, identify which airplane they're working on. They can click on that, and what it'll do is bring up all that airplane's information, as well as any tickets that have been connected with that airplane for maintenance. It also gives them the option here to add a record for maintenance in case they need to attach a record that they've already created in the maintenance record base. And there are some other views that are also available. Because this is an introductory course today and we're just covering the basics, but I do want to kind of cover the fact that there is a Kanban view, a timeline view, which is particularly good for project management, a list view, which creates organized layers of data, and a Gantt chart view. These are great for people that are working in complex multi-step projects where you have a lot of different things going on at the same time. And the next thing I want to do is cover the colors. So you'll notice here at the top, there's a button next to the share view button that says color, and it has a small paint bucket. And this is a great way to organize your information. You can choose to color things based on a specific field. So you can select here model or location and change the colors. Another great feature is that you can do it based on conditions. So this is very similar to, for example, conditional formatting in Excel. So if you wanted all the aircraft that contain, let's say, the value for 150, then you could add a condition, and you can add several different conditions here for which colors you want to use. And we're going to pick purple here. So you can select different colors based on the needs. And then what you'll notice here is All the aircraft that contain 150 have now a purple stripe here on the side. It's just those two. It'll let me identify those a lot more quickly. Let's leave them red, a little easier to see. And the next thing I want to cover is the filters option. And filters are really great for organizing sets of data that are very complex. So for example, in our credit certification spreadsheet over here, we can use the filter to select students that are maybe only in one grade. So we can select the grade section is, and then say, let's say in this case, we have some 11th graders and one 10th grader that we only want to see the 10th grader. So we'll just select that and it'll only show the 10th grader. Now, the real power in Airtable when it comes to using these filters is the fact that you can add multi-conditions. So you can also add an and or statement, which makes it extremely easy to use because or statements are typically very challenging, especially when you have multiple or statements in Microsoft Excel, whether you're using a formula or if you're using another database software or data visualization software like Power BI, things can get really challenging once you start involving multiple or statements. Now here, it's built into the software. So all you need to do is add the conditions and you can say, I need all the students that are grade 10 or grade 11, and it'll show both. And you can also use and statements. So if you want to use multiple and statements to include different values, you can also do those as well. So a really great feature for sorting data, especially on big data sets where you need to identify from multiple different columns. It's actually one of the features I love the most about Airtable. One of the things that makes it the most useful is having those multiple or statements, because that is a lot less formula writing for those of you that do really data intensive work. And the next feature I want to cover is the grouping feature. So grouping is pretty cool. It allows you to kind of expand on that filtering feature. So you can say here we have a lot of students for US government. We have some full credit, some half credit. So let's take a look at these and let's change some of this dummy data. Let's say that some of these students are going to be taking math and some of them are going to be taking world history. Perfect. And some are going to be taking English 1. And let's do physics. So now I have a bunch of different students in different classes. And let's say that I need to group these students by class because it's going to make it easier to process this data. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and group by course selection. And what that does is rearrange the table so that all the records for each group are put together in a separate box. So you'll notice that first we have all of our English 1 through ESOL. We have math, college readiness, then physical science, physics, all of our US government students, and our world history students. And each of these boxes is fully collapsible, so you can go ahead and collapse those data sets like that and share this view with other colleagues in order to kind of access this data in a more easy to digest manner, because it really is a lot easier to sort through data when you can group it as opposed to just a spreadsheet that doesn't have any grouping at all. So the next thing I want to talk about is sorting. And sorting works very similar to Excel in that you just choose the column that you want to sort by, and it'll sort according to alphabetical or reverse alphabetical. So you can do student ID or school. I can go to processing date, and it'll set it by either most recent to oldest or oldest to most recent. And the next feature I want to talk about, and these are the final features I'm going to talk about today, but the most important probably is the fact that Airtable has built-in automations and extensions. So I'm going to begin with automations, and in order to cover automations, I'm going to go over to the Summer 305 editor, and I'm going to open up my automations tab. And what I have here is the automations menu. So the automations menu is really important for those of you that want to reduce the workload of maybe sending automatic confirmation requests or sending emails to students. And what it allows you to do is create an action for when a record is created or when a record is edited. So the first thing is a conditional logic, which determines whether or not, it's going to run this automation. So it could be you're telling Airtable to run an automation when you create a record, or you're telling Airtable to run an automation when a record is modified or when a record is deleted. And based on that, it will run a script or create an email and send an email, or run an integration from one of the various different softwares that are connected. So in order to show what that looks like, I'm going to go to another one that I have here. And I'm going to be opening sorry, I clicked the wrong button here. I'm going to be going to this one here. Actually, we're just going to go back to this one over here. Perfect. So what we'll do here is click send an email. And what this automation is being told to do is that when a record is being created, you're telling Airtable to send an email. So in this menu that pops out of the right-hand side, you'll have the subject line and the message line, where you can add all the information for that automated email that is being sent out to the participant. So you'll notice here there's a plus sign where you can add who is the person that is going to be receiving this email. And for example, if this was a form that collected an email from a student, you can select it to choose that same email and send it right back as a confirmation to the student. It also lets you add an attachment, and it does let you generate a preview and test it out. So that's just one of the different automations that can be done with Airtable. The next really great feature that Airtable has is the use of extensions. So if you click here on the right-hand side on the extensions menu, it'll bring up a blank box where you can add various different extensions. Now, before I show a few of these extensions and how they look, I'm going to click the add an extension so that it can show the marketplace. So this is the marketplace. This is where you can find different extensions or scripts that do various different things. And this is really the strength of Airtable, right? The ability to connect with these scripts and automate a lot of the workflow. So one of the ones that I do use a lot is Page Designer. And I'll show you guys what that looks like, because I think that is one of the most common ones. And what Page Designer does is it allows you to take your records and print them into PDFs or turn them into forms. So what that looks like is this right here. So let's take a look at our credit certification data. We have 14 records here for various different courses. And if I go over here to the Page Designer extension and click on the present button, what it'll do is take that data from the records and put them into this form that I've created in the form designer. So as I flip through these, you'll notice that I have various different courses and various different dates. Here's some math college, US government for these different students. And it does allow you to print this out as a PDF. So this is really great for turning a bunch of records into forms that need to be filed or need to be processed digitally. It's much faster than printing them out physically or transferring the data to a mail merge. And some of the other things, some of the other features that it does allow also is, for example, for pivot tables. So you can use a pivot table. So in this case, I wanted a sum of all the different records at all the different schools. And this one's connected to the other table that has the real data. That's why the numbers are a little bit different. And basically what it does is tell me each school and how many records are counted there. And that's a pivot table. So very similar to Excel. And of course, it does have literally hundreds of different extensions that you can use. Some are third party, some are built in with Airtable, and it really enhances all of the different features that can be used in Airtable. So essentially, that is the Airtable introduction that I wanted to give you guys. Like I said, this software really has a tremendous capacity to improve instruction and also to improve administration at a school. It's kind of like Excel, but has a lot more of a friendlier user interface, and it also benefits from being cloud-based. So for those of you that do a lot of cooperative work with other employees, or you do a lot of data sharing, this is a great software to kind of get ahead. For those of you that do a lot of forms and data collecting, really consider using Airtable. Now, before I continue, I do want to stress two important things. So Airtable has two different plans. They have a free plan and a paid plan. A lot of the things that I showed you today can be accessed on the free plan without any problem. But for those of you that want to launch it at an enterprise level, or across a whole district or institution, I would consider looking at the paid plan, because it does offer some additional features. So at this time, I do want to take a moment to answer any questions that anyone might have. Opening up the question and answer box here. So I do have a question here on forms. When it comes to creating a form and sending the form out with a link, can anyone fill out the form? So yes, depending on the permissions that you set on the form is whether or not somebody has to log in order to submit the form. Now, this is going to depend really on your Airtable account and how many user accounts you have, and whether or not students are users on those accounts. So yes, it does have a feature for validating that, very similar to Microsoft Forms or Google Forms. Very, very similar in that manner. Who creates this software? Good question. This software is a private company, so they're completely on their own. But it is in use by several, Fortune 500 companies. Like I know Netflix uses it, and a few others. I think American Airlines also uses it. It's designed to be scalable, so you can use it for personal use, or you can use it at a multi, using thousands of employees at a very high level. All right, so I don't see any more questions at this time. So I do want, at this point, to invite you guys to give us back some feedback. We really do value your feedback here at IPDE. It helps us to guide our future presentations and give you guys all the information that you need. At this time, I also want to be sure to remind you to tune into our webinar, which is going to be tomorrow, May 31st, for Webinar Wednesdays. And the topic will be the assessment of adult education metrics with a strategic comparison of LCPs, EFLs, and MSGs. So really great presentation for those of you interested in the data piece, for those of you interested in the funding piece and how that works. And once again, I do want to thank you all for your feedback. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you for joining us for Tech Tuesdays, and have a wonderful afternoon.